Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd, a podcast all about getting shit done, hopefully in an elegant way that doesn't leave you too broken. In our crazy worlds, we're all about balancing the need to work enough to make ends meet, enough not to annoy our bosses, but also enough that we feel like we've done enough, which can be a whole different psychological and emotional ballgame, along with the human need to rest and stay well. Plus, on top of that, we'd quite like to enjoy ourselves, maybe just a little bit along the way, spending quality time with those we love. I, for one, love hearing about how people get that balance and work more efficiently so they have more time to do the things that they love. Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd. It's not often a productivity book should come with a trigger warning. I made the fatal mistake of starting this book on Audible while I was eating my lunch and was almost immediately into stab wounds and pretty graphic descriptions of medical stuff that did not go well with my barbecue halloumi leftovers. But Atul Gawande is by trade a surgeon. And so what do aviation disasters, operating theatres and skyscraper construction all have in common? Well, weirdly, they all rely on one very simple tool to prevent catastrophes. A tool so simple, so basic, that most of us completely overlook it. It is a humble checklist. And today we are talking about the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande and why the most powerful productivity tool might not be an app, might not be a planner, probably is, or a clever system. And on the surface, it sounds like this might be the most boring productivity book ever written, a book about checklists. But stick with me, because honestly, I really love this book. It explores something really interesting, which is why incredibly smart people who are highly trained at the top of their game, pilots, surgeons, engineers, we're talking people who are, most brilliant percentage of their careers, still make simple mistakes. And more importantly, how something as absolutely basic as a checklist has saved thousands of lives and transformed some of the most complex professions in the world. I hope you enjoy. Hi, and welcome to Productivity Nerd. Today, I'm joined in real life by my friend and colleague, Claire Ennion. Hey, Claire.
Hello.
Hello. And today we are talking about the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. And the unofficial title of the podcast is Why Do Incredibly Smart People Still Forget Really Obvious Things and How Can We Fix That? It's a really short but punchy book. I was surprisingly hooked about the humble checklist, but it's a bit more than that. So basically the challenge is, modern work, whatever that may be, is really complicated. So Gawande starts with the idea that modern professionals have become it's too hard for any one individual to know everything, right? Our brains cannot hold all the information to do the thing, right? That certainly sums up my working life. Without lists, my brain would explode, frankly, if I only used my brain to remember everything. And it's not that people don't know what they're doing. In fact, it's kind of the opposite of that. Doctors, engineers, pilots, lawyers, maybe even me, we all have enormous amounts of training and knowledge, and we're experts. But that isn't actually the problem. The problem is complexity. There are just too many steps, too many moving parts, and too many things that have to happen in the right order. So what he discovered in medicine is that when things go wrong, it's rarely because doctors didn't know what to do. It's because something really simple got missed. So in hospitals, for example, doctors know that they must wash their hands, they must give antibiotics before surgery, and they must confirm that they've got the right patient. Quite important.
Quite important.
Quite important. And then obviously they must monitor vital signs once they're under anaesthetic. But in the chaos of an operating theatre, one of those steps might just get skipped, right? And when that happens, consequences can be massive. Does it sound familiar? Life being too complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a list girl, and I make lists of lists of lists.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Yep.
And we will talk about when is a list a checklist and when is a checklist a list and all that malarkey. But I mean, an example that I can think of where a really simple, stupid thing was overlooked in a very complex, very big business. Somebody changed jobs and there was nobody whose job it was to check I can't remember if it was an info at or a sales at email address. And a potential client emailed that address going, hello, I've got a really nice big piece of work, probably several million pieces several million pounds worth of work. They emailed that email address and it sat there for 2 weeks before anyone found it.
Nobody was keeping an eye on it.
Nobody was tracking the email box. And that is one of those things that is such a simple thing, but just got missed in the
handover,
or you know, somebody thought it was somebody else's job, or yeah, whatever. But that kind of thing, really easy, right? And you know, you'd think you might lose £1 million job because you weren't the cheapest, or your proposal wasn't the best, but actually not checking an inbox, that's just shocking, right? So it's a volume versus complexity problem. So Gawande says there are actually two kinds of problems in modern work. The first is the volume, like there's just too much information to remember. And the second is complexity. So there's loads of different steps that all have to interact with each other. And the tricky thing is when you try and combine those two, that's an awful lot of information and an awful lot of steps. And we humans just aren't very good at doing that reliably, right? Even brilliant people forget really silly things. We're humans, exactly. We're not robots. And that's not me saying bring in the robots. I argue with ChatGPT at least once a day. But a real life example. So in the book, which I found fascinating actually, and it took a lot of examples from building skyscrapers to operating theatres, which is obviously this guy's background, and but pilots. And pilots in particular discovered checklists because the oldie planes, right? You know, you cranked a handle, let the handbrake go, and kind of went for it, and that was as complex as it got back in the old days, where that was what planes. But then there comes a point where the planes get more complicated, and there was basically, I think there was a really nasty crash once planes got to the point where they had a lot of instruments and a lot of things to do, and they kind of went, nobody can remember all this now. And that was how the first checklist in aviation came about, because they were literally like, no one brilliant human can manage this now.
And that's a key part of flying, isn't it? Before the plane departs, the pilot's responsibility is a checklist.
They have loads. They have like one before they leave the, I want to say dock, but that's not the right. Yes, thank you. That'll do. Another one before they leave the end of the runway. Another one before. They have checklists. It was fascinating, the aviation bit in all of this. And this guy got to go in a simulator and, but also talked about, you know, the Hudson Bay crash.
Oh yes, that is fascinating.
That was apparently saved because they had a checklist in the event of engine failure, and that was what saved them. The co-pilot got onto the checklist, and you know, obviously years of experience, you know, massive amounts of calm under pressure, all of that good stuff. But actually, they were also right. We've got a rule book for this.
We've done this. What else do we do?
Yeah. So a pilot flying these days, they're going to be monitoring the engines, they're going to be navigating, they're going to be looking at the weather, they're going to be communicating with different air traffic control, all the different flight controls.
And this fascinates me because planes are so driven by computers these days that they still revert back to humans doing the checklist. Doing the checklist.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we talk about VAs a lot and AI taking over, but you still need a human to double check things correctly. And again, it comes back to checklists, etc. So it really fascinates me.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the checklists these days are electronic, right? So when, I don't know, when they put the key in, I don't know how it works in a plane.
Do they have a key?
I'm sure
I don't think they have a key.
I don't know what it is. I'm sure I'm making that up.
It'd be a big key.
It'd be like a big crank. But yeah, when they do the thing, I don't know, press the button, whatever you do.
Maybe they've got fobs like car keys now.
Yeah, maybe. But you know, something will pop up going, this is your pre
checklist.
Yeah. So, you know, but they also have a book as well. They literally have a physical book.
And that's what you know, it does go back to human responsibility.
But because we've made everything so complicated, and this is the same across operations as well, Gawande was talking about you know, we've added in robotics, we've added in much more complex anesthesia, and you know, you've got you know, what do you call it when you go in with a camera, laparoscopic, you've got all those things. The more tools you have, the more things there are that can go wrong, right? Basically, as opposed to just a bloke with a saw, which, you know, in the olden days, bite on this, hack your leg off, job is a good one. I mean,
sounds horrific.
Not to go back to that. But, you know, the complexity is bigger. I mean, clearly, one would hope the survival rates are higher and the pain is less. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, the issue isn't intelligence or training. The issue is cognitive overload. So yeah, we see that a lot, right? Everybody's job is insanely complicated, and there's just a lot happening at any one given time.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, the plane I was talking about, it was actually a Boeing. It was built back in the 1930s, and it was supposed to be the most advanced aircraft in the world, but during a test flight, it crashed. And the investigators, they discovered it was nothing wrong with the plane, actually. The pilot had forgotten one step, which was releasing a locking mechanism before takeoff. Literally that. But instead of blaming that pilot, who I assume was dead, so, you know, feels mean, they kind of went, right, okay, well, now planes are too complicated to rely on memory alone to get them going. So that was what started the pilot checklist. So now, you know, pilots, well, then, you know, your flaps set, your fuel checked, your controls tested, instruments verified, blah, blah, blah. And even pilots who have been flying for 20 years, 30 years, still use them, because it's not a skills thing and it's not an ability thing. It is a preventing overload thing.
Yeah.
And they kind of get that in aviation, hence the sort of, you know, Hudson Bay thing. You know, in a crisis, you use your experience and your best common sense, and you use a checklist alongside, because in the moment of panic, you're quite likely to forget something because, you know, panic, right? So yeah, I have to say I've never given any thought to the pre-flight check, but it's crew prepare the cabin for departure, isn't it? And the crew have their, you know, door locks and making sure everybody's strapped in. And
can you imagine if somebody didn't pull that handle down properly?
I was talking to somebody about this actually, because I was on a very dubious Ryanair flight once, and there was some complete nutter who kept trying to open that door mid-flight. And I was talking to a steward about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, we'd never have managed it. It's locked. Like, you literally can't." He could sit and pull at that handle all day long. It's not going to open. I was like, well, that kind of explains why everybody was so relaxed. But if they'd have explained that to me, I might have been a bit more relaxed, because as it was, I was the most terrified 90 minutes of my life watching this Muppet fannying about.
Scary, yeah.
I mean, why? Yeah. Anyway, but then Gawande, he came across checklists because his background is medicine. Basically, he's a surgeon and also has worked for the World Health Organization in kind of health. So he started wondering if checklists could work in medicine. And obviously, doctors, not known for their humility and kind of hated the idea. It's like, we're highly trained professionals. We don't need a bloody checklist, sod off. But when tests were done, so they had a sort of series of test hospitals, and they assessed a series of things, you know, things gone wrong in, like, I can't remember how many months before adding a checklist. Then they added a checklist and recorded it. And the hospitals from all over the world, so they had some in London, some in the States, some in developing countries, real mixture, because they wanted it to be about the checklist, not about, you know, the price of care, effectively. So they had one NHS, one, you know, very expensive hospital in the States, and then some out in the sticks in Africa, where, you know, literally there's kind of one doctor for every 20,000 people or something mad. So real list. But what he found was, across the board, the most dangerous errors in hospitals were often really simple steps being missed. So the idea wasn't to replace expertise, it was to support it. Like, you obviously understand that by the time somebody's a doctor, they know what they're doing, right? So, for example, they created a checklist for inserting a central line, which is a tube placed into a large vein. So doctors basically just need to follow procedures to keep it sterile, right? So, you know, wash your hands, wear sterile gloves, clean the patient's skin, cover with sterile drapes. These steps, everybody knew about them, but it didn't necessarily mean that in the moment of panic, they were done very consistently. So consistently, exactly. And I know how many, I was thinking about this in relation to ClickUp, because ClickUp has a lot of processes that are meant to happen,
and then sequence.
But as we were talking about with AI taking over the world, ClickUp has in its wisdom somehow just forgotten to do some of these automations, and I go, oh, that's funny, I thought that was going to pop up and remind me to do that thing at some point, and it has not. No. No.
So there is a flaw in that process.
There is a flaw in that process, right? And we have a load of checklists for new team members and new clients, because actually onboarding a new client or onboarding a new team member, none of it is difficult. And we sort of know what we need to do, but because there are so many of them.
Well, this is what I've found as PV's grown. It's not that we don't know what we're doing. It's it's the volume, and it's remembering everybody and putting those steps in place.
It's all the little steps.
It is.
Onboarding a new client, you've got to sort out. So, Laura needs to know about the account system. We need to sort out MinuteDoc. Everybody who's on the project needs to be given access to MinuteDoc, the right goals have to be
contracts,
it's just
the whole
like
thing.
A vast number of very small steps, most of which, thank God, Helen does, because she's a genius. But even Helen, who is a genius, needs a list to work off. Otherwise, one of those things, and we did have an occasion where I think both of us, there was one step and each of us thought the other was doing it.
Exactly.
And
so who's the owner?
So now we have a really clear list of, right, these are what he's doing and this is who is doing it. And it makes life so much easier. But it took a bit of finagling to get to that point, right? And there was definitely oh, I thought you were doing that. Oh no, I thought that was mine. Okay. Oopsie, sorry. Yes. So yes, ClickUp has killed me ever so slightly, but we have a meeting, we're going to sort it out. So the Michigan hospital experiment was one of the parts of the book that he ran through, and it was run by a doctor called Peter Pronovost, great name. But he introduced this 5-step checklist for inserting central lines in ICUs, just 5 steps. So it's not complicated, right? And it's just making sure that the steps happened every single time, like we talked about earlier. And what they found was, just from following those 5 checklist things, right? And bearing in mind, everyone knows you're meant to do these 5 things. It's not news. It's not changing the procedure.
They've all done it in their training.
They've all done it in their training. Nobody is surprised or horrified by any of these steps. It's just by having a physical list in front of them that says you need to do these 5 things. The results, the infection rates dropped by 66%. Over 1,500 lives were saved. This is just bugging something in somebody's arm, right? This is mad. And hospitals saved, in America, about £200 million in presumably people suing the arse off them. So, all from a checklist that took less than a minute to run through. Got to love a list.
Got to love a list.
Got to love a list. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it does make me wonder how many more problems in organisations that cannot be solved by adding more bright people or more strategy, but just by going back to the basics and just doing the really simple stuff.
It's definitely good at looking at a process and putting it down.
Things that it's what's taken for granted, isn't it? And I think, when you join a new company and there's the official rule book that you get, and then there's the unofficial rule book that you don't know about, but everybody else seems to know about, and it takes.
But they learn over time.
Yes. And it's those things that, again, I mean, you would hope with something like being a doctor or whatever, that there's some certain steps, but if they're not laid out, how do you know about them?
Right? And and again, human error. If you've got a doctor who's tired, has been on a late shift and called back in, these things happen. So having a checklist should make it small and minimal to happen. I
mean, I used to work in restaurants and we used to have checklists because, I mean, it wasn't exactly Michelin starred where I worked, but you can have the fanciest restaurant in the world and serve, beautiful minuscule courgette flowers and all the rest of it, but if there's no toilet roll in the loos, customers aren't going to be happy, right? So you need those basics covered. But somebody somewhere has got a checklist in the loo that says, right, okay, I've checked that there is loo roll, I've checked that the hand towels are there, I've checked this, I've checked that. You see them in the loos all the time, and I'm absolutely sure all the cleaners everywhere ignore them, right? Or all the restaurant managers in the world just look at it and go, tick sign.
I'm sure they do. I thought you were going to say, like, cauliflower flowers, somebody might be allergic to them. So we ask at the table, does anybody have any allergies?
Well, these days, not back in the 90s when I did it, you just had to suck it up, and if you were allergic, you died. That's how it was in the 90s. You took
a chance.
You paid your money to take a chance. Didn't have allergies in the 90s. But no, but the basics of a restaurant or a hotel are things like loo roll and making sure the floor's clean and all that kind of stuff. because you've got to have that.
You've got to have basic standards for people to want to come and visit.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And obviously these days ask about allergies because, you know, bad. But Gawande spent some time talking about why experts resist checklists, and I totally get this. Because smart, well-trained people can find being given a list a bit, well, offensive, frankly. And I kind of see it. And there is, you know, there's psychological reason for it, because it makes you feel like you're not competent. It's like, if you have to tell me to do these 5 things, are you telling me I don't know how to do my job? Because I do know how to do my job. I get it. But actually the truth is the opposite. Checklists exist because people are very competent, but they're also very human and tired, busy,
at life, and they might be thinking about something that happened that morning and mulling it over, and then just do half a job and then realize, oh God, I've screwed up.
Well, and that's you and me in our day-to-day life. Yeah. We don't have people, you know, in pieces on an operating table in front of us. You imagine if somebody's, you know.
Well, my friend, her went in for an operation and got marked up on the wrong leg. Luckily, realised. Yeah. So they must have had a checklist to double check it was the right leg.
Well, I mean, they do. So in surgery, doctors have accidentally operated on the wrong leg before, given medication to the wrong parent, started surgery without antibiotics. And I didn't know this, but apparently antibiotics given even like 1 second before an incision is made massively reduces the risk of infection. So it's just standard practice now. But, you know, that's not because they're bad doctors. It's because it's a chaotic environment, right? And
it's intense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, egos. There's a lot of egos in hospital.
Yeah.
And pilots. I've met some funky pilots in my time. I say that. I've only met one, but he was a right prick.
Oh no, see, the one I know is really lovely.
I'm sure the others are lovely as well. I've just had a bad one. Yeah. But there's definitely something.
They're very intelligent people.
Yeah, and massively well trained and hugely experienced, right? So it's about, I suppose, when they come on board and they go, right, we're going to do this checklist thing, you've got to position it in the right way.
I was going to say, it is all about, well, so I think a pilot really relies on their checklist. That's part of the whole role.
And it's and in aviation, from what I gather, so back in the olden days when you used to get in your little cloth plane, crank your handle up and go, being a complete maverick and, you know, basically not caring if you died was kind of part of the job description, right? You had to accept that it was a very dangerous profession, and frankly being reckless was important, because if you weren't going to get up. And these days, part of the sort of hiring and all of the training process is absolutely about discipline and reliability and following the rules, because that these days is more important than somebody who's, you know, a complete know-it-all. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, absolutely. So Gawande eventually worked with the WHO, World Health Organization, and created a worldwide surgical checklist. And it had 19 items, which actually for surgery is pretty short, right? Given the number of different surgeries. And it took a long time. Like, he didn't just rock it out with 19. They went through lots of iterations, and different hospitals will tweak it so it's usable. Because if it's too long, it takes too long, and then people just stop doing it because it's a pain.
And interestingly, is it involving multiple different people through this?
Yes, and that is part of the beauty of it. So we'll get to it, but part of the beauty of this particular checklist is about communication. And this is really interesting. So yeah, but I mean, on that list is literally confirm the identity of the patient, you know, check their little tag, confirm surgical site, ensure antibiotics are given, confirm necessary equipment. And the idea is that you pause at key moments and confirm everything, and everyone in the room does that, right? So everybody knows what's
listening.
Yeah. And when they tested this checklist across 8 hospitals globally in their kind of pilot, deaths dropped by 47%. Imagine. And complications dropped by 38%. I mean, that's massive just for ticking some boxes, right? But the pausing is part of the process, because it's a time for people to think. And one of, I don't think it was on my list there, but he certainly talks about, you know, the open discussion that says, is there anything we should know about this patient before we do this? And there was one guy who, so I think they were doing some sort of neurological surgery. So the patient was awake, right? And needed to be awake because the patient needed to communicate as they were doing the operation. You know, how you kind of go, oh, yes, I can feel that, or my hand's tingling, whatever. All good, except that the patient wasn't verbal. So the patient and the anesthesiologist had agreed a series of hand signals, but typically in surgery, they strap your hands down. So somebody went, oh, yeah, we're communicating by hand signals. And they went, well, that's really helpful because we were just about to strap his hands to the bed. It'd be quite difficult to communicate with hand signals if his hands are strapped to the bed. So it's that kind of weirdness that it's like, is there anything else we should know? You know, anything peculiar, blah, blah, blah. There was another lady who really didn't want the antibiotics because she gets really sick from antibiotics. And they'd agreed that her surgery was very low risk. Therefore, the surgeon was very happy to go ahead without the antibiotics. But of course, it's on the checklist, it's on the routine. So they nearly gave it to her 3 times by accident. And at one point, she even went, oi, is that antibiotics? Please don't give me those. And yeah, but that's the whole, is there anything special we should know about this?
Any
Is there
changes?
any changes? And it's that open communication. So yeah, pause points are good, right?
It is good to listen sometimes.
And yeah, and just check everything before you just launch in. Absolutely. And communication, so you know, these pause points and the fact that everybody is doing this checklist together. It's not one person with a checklist going, oh, yes, that, yes, that, yes, that. Communication is obviously, you know, in an operating room, you're not necessarily with people who you've ever met before. You might have
different teams
every single time. But the simple step can make a massive difference. So not only is it opening communication, so people who know something will say something, but actually also, and particularly quite often in a surgery, they get the nurse to run through the checklist, which puts them in a position of a bit more authority, because surgeons can be, as we know, somewhat hierarchical and not want nurses to tell them that they're about to chop the wrong leg off. And the nurse will go to the end, well, yeah, I didn't want to say because you're going to shout at me. So it puts the nurses in a bit more of a position of authority. And, you know, now a nurse who previously might have stayed silent is going, hang on a minute, we haven't done the antibiotics yet. But it allows junior staff to speak up and prevent mistakes. And hilariously, talking about your friend, where they nearly took operation on the wrong bit of them. I'm going in for my hip replacement in a couple of weeks. And in my, you know, big old patient booklet about, you know, bring this and don't bring that and all the rest of it, they actually say, before you go down to surgery, somebody will write on you.
Yeah, they get the old felt tip.
Get the old Sharpie out. If nobody has written on you by the time you're taken down to theatre, please raise it with somebody. So they're even putting patients in the
position of responsibility.
Well, not
which leg do you want done more?
Yeah, please don't do my right leg. It's fine. Please just do the left. I mean, I'll probably need both done eventually, but not today.
But yeah, you want the right one done.
Correct one, yes, which would be left. But yeah, but it's but it is that you know, there is that kind of white coat syndrome that people in authority shouldn't be questioned, shouldn't be asked things, and they're even saying, you know, you are within your rights. I mean, they don't know me, I'm quite a bolshy cow, I'd question it anyway. But they're even making the point that patients can go, hello, what are you doing? So yeah, but communication is so important in a team. And that in itself stops mistakes, right? So one of the
and that's why, you know, we have a heads meeting, and we download everything,
so everybody knows what's going on, where and how. And so we're lucky because we work together all the time. That still doesn't necessarily mean we're very good at communicating well all the time, but when you're in a room with other people, you know, one of the stupid things that he did, you know, I think one of the hospitals was absolutely enormous, and so you might never have met the people in the room with you before ever, and he said the first thing on the checklist is go around the room, say your name and what your role is, and the second thing is say what the operation is, because astonishingly there were some operations where people left the room and they weren't entirely sure what had been done.
That's scary,
isn't it? But I mean, I guess if you're a very peripheral nurse and it's just, can you hand me that? Can you hand me that?
They just went into that
Yeah.
role.
But it's like, no, we're here today to do a blur, whatever. And this is Bob. Can we check Bob's name tag? Yes, definitely Bob, right? Definitely Bob's left leg, blah, you know. But by getting people speaking early on, you're encouraging them to speak, right? You know, forcing them to speak, effectively, you are going to make them speak a bit more. So yeah, we have our heads off meeting. That's a good process that shifts how we work together, because we are across different clients. So, you know, there's many of us that see everything. Yeah. So obviously there's good checklists and there's bad checklists. And checklists will not fix all, tragically.
No, and sometimes you're doing it for the sake of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So bad checklists are effectively too long, too complicated, or timed wrong. And good checklists are short, they are clear, and they use at exactly the right moment. So, for example, our pilots, they don't have 200 items on a checklist, which is probably the amount of stuff they have to get through, right, before they actually get in the air. But they have a short checklist before takeoff, short checklist before landing, and then one for emergencies, like our friends on the old Hudson River. But yeah, because sometimes our productivity systems get too complicated, and then when anything gets too complicated, you stop using it because
you switch off. It's like,
yeah,
I know what I'm doing.
Fine, I can't be bothered. Yeah, exactly. When you get to anything that's a certain number of points. So I think I think they said a good checklist should be 7 to 9 things, and it's probably better to have 2 shorter ones than one massive long one.
I agree.
If you can find a sensible point, which, you know, in an operating, well, in any
start, a middle, and a finish.
Yeah. And, you know, in most things, there are going to be that, right, okay, at this point, we'll do this, and at this point, we'll do that. Like, you know, operating theatre, right, patient is here. Before we drug them, let's do this one. After we drug them, but before we get the scalpel out, let's do these ones.
Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I didn't know. So mostly in the UK, we are anaesthetised before we go into the operating room. Other places, you're not. You go into the operating room awake and they anaesthetise you in there.
I'm the wrong person to talk about that because I'm such a mess when I go down.
Are you?
Yes.
I love a good anaesthetic,
No.
honestly. Any excuse for a day nap, and I am
absolutely petrified. Yeah, shaking.
Oh, I'm like, give me the drug.
Crying. Yes, embarrassingly.
Oh,
but
man.
it's almost fear and it takes over.
You need a checklist.
It's another story.
Checklist 1, breathe. Oh, God bless you. No, I don't mind them. So
you're looking forward to next Saturday.
Day nap. Yeah. I mean, I'm weird like that. I mean, I had an MRI and I'm like, oh, great, I get to lie down in the middle of the day. This is great.
It's musical.
I didn't even have music, actually.
Oh, they normally do.
They do. I think they offered me some, and
wasn't your cup of tea.
No, I just don't think they pressed play, and I didn't really care. I just nodded off. Yeah, any excuse for a sleep. So, I mean, the big lesson of the book is that success isn't necessarily about heroes, individuals, or even education. No. It's about good systems and good teamwork.
Agreed.
And even the most smart people in the world need systems that support them, because life is too complicated for us to hold everything in our heads, essentially.
Yeah.
And, you know, an amazing surgeon working in a chaotic system will naturally just make more mistakes than an average surgeon working within a sensible system.
Yeah,
systems matter. So where are you going to add a nice simple checklist, and apart from obviously your next German anaesthetic?
Probably within the team, actually.
Yeah.
So we've got a few changes going to happen.
We have.
So yeah, I think divide and conquer. So you might want to download over to me, and then I'll need to make a checklist to ensure that I'm covering those things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you as always for chatting this through with me. I'm sorry we've got into anaesthetising you. It's either that or killing you. I can't seem to get through it, can we? Just can't. As always, you bring the sensible and practical edge to everything. And I think this is really interesting because it's such a simple idea, a checklist. You sort of assume they've always been there, and they have.
They have, yeah.
But you kind of, yeah, it would never occur to me that there wasn't one in some of these places, and you kind of go, oh, that's interesting.
I think even more so how PC people are these days, that companies have put checklists in place to ensure things don't happen, do you think? Even like, when you go into a restaurant now,
do you have any allergies?
Do you have any allergies?
Yes. Yeah, which everybody over the age of 40 just rolls their eyes and goes, no.
Agreed.
They didn't have them back in our day. You just had to eat stuff and then
Or leave
swell
it,
up.
move it to the side.
Unless it was peanuts, no one cared.
No.
Yeah. But I do think I feel a new appreciation for checklists after this book. And it was a surprisingly interesting book. I mean, I did nearly vomit because it started and I was trying to eat my lunch and it was all about hacking somebody open and doing something. I was like, I wasn't expecting this from what I consider to be a sort of productivity book. Never mind. But thank you so much for listening to Productivity Nerd. If you enjoyed this episode, do share it with a friend, a colleague, or anyone who might secretly benefit from writing a little checklist before they dive into their next project. We will be back soon with more ideas, more books, and a slightly more obsessive conversations about getting stuff done. Until then, thanks for listening. So that was the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. It is a really fascinating reminder that in a complicated world, success isn't always about brilliance or experience. Sometimes it's about having the right systems in place so that the bleeding obvious things don't get missed when things get a bit hairy. And if a simple checklist can help surgeons, pilots, engineers, and others avoid catastrophic mistakes, then probably there's something in it for us mere mortals as well. Thank you so much for listening to Productivity Nerd. If you enjoyed the episode, do share it with a friend, a colleague, anyone who might need a list. And remember, until next time, productivity isn't necessarily about having a perfect memory. It's about building systems so you don't need to have a perfect memory. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.